Hello everyone and welcome to my Bachelor Nation 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Golden Bachelorette Joan Vassos on TV promise she didn't keep. What is the one television promise that the Golden Bachelorette star, Joan Vassos, did not keep? She had a lot to go through when she returned to reality TV, and this time as the lead of this groundbreaking show. So what was the singular rule she broke, and was it that big of a deal? Keep reading for more details. Joan Vassos on TV promise she didn't keep. It is not Joan Vassos' first rodeo when it comes to reality television. She was a contender for Jerry Turner's heart in the premiere season of The Golden Bachelor. However, she ended up selflessly exiting to go home and take care of her daughter, as family is the core of who she is. Her story is beautifully sad. She had an amazing love story with her husband, John, who tragically passed away in 2021 from pancreatic cancer. They had been together for over 30 years and really relished life, so to put herself back out there was a huge deal and something she was not sure she was ready for. In a lot of ways, Joan felt she was cheating on John. Now she has been selected as the first ever Golden Bachelorette with a slew of amazing eligible men. They are all vying for her heart and her roses. She wants someone she can go on adventures with and be a true family person. Yet, there was one promise she made to her family when she entered the show that she broke. According to the Daily Express US, it was no kissing. As viewers saw in the season premiere, which aired on Wednesday, September 18th, Joan Vassos locked lips with Kelsey Anderson's father Mark in a later episode. Happens to the best of us. Before Joan Vassos, there was Jerry Turner, the OG of the Golden franchise. He had to deal with what his kids would think of seeing him getting cozy on television. So, what did he tell them when he was heading on to the show? He ended up marrying Theresa Nist in a Bachelor special, but they parted ways just a short time later. Jerry will appear on Joan's season to offer advice, and hopefully that is all. Joan Vassos, the sophisticated, silver-haired beauty who captured the hearts of millions as the Golden Bachelorette, stood on the edge of a new chapter in her life. At 60, she had outgrown the fairy tales of her youth, and the reality of her golden years set in like a soft, familiar rhythm. No longer swayed by the picture-perfect promises of love, Joan had her feet firmly planted in reality. When she stepped onto the screen, Joan wasn't just another hopeful romantic. She was a symbol of elegance, wisdom, and fierce independence. Her promise was simple and sincere. One she spoke during her grand debut. "I will never compromise who I am for anyone, no matter how charming they seem." It was a vow she made not only to herself, but to the millions of women watching. Women who had been told time and again to dim their light for the sake of love. Joan had lived through enough to know that loving someone shouldn't mean losing yourself in the process. But love, in all its complexity, doesn't play by rules, and sometimes the heart has a way of rewriting even the strongest promises. From the first night on the show, Joan exuded a natural grace that set her apart from the others. Dressed in a flowing gown the color of champagne, she greeted her suitors with a warm smile that reached her eyes, but there was also an undeniable sense of wisdom behind her gaze. She had lived a full life, raising children, navigating the highs and lows of marriage, loss, and renewal. Now she was ready to explore the possibility of finding a companion who truly understood her, someone who would love her without asking her to compromise her essence. Week after week, Joan became the woman everyone talked about. She was neither dramatic nor desperate, and her suitors quickly learned that she was nobody's fool. She didn't play coy or string them along for the sake of ratings. Instead, she asked hard questions, made deep connections, and most importantly, held onto her integrity like a lifeline. But there was one man who seemed different, someone who made her heart skip a beat in a way she hadn't felt in years. His name was Henry, a retired architect with a quick wit and a smile that could melt glaciers. Henry was charming, the kind of charming that felt effortless, not rehearsed. From the moment he stepped out of the limo, Joan felt the flutter of something she hadn't anticipated: hope. At first, Joan's promise to herself felt secure. She knew how to maintain her independence, even as her bond with Henry grew. The two shared stolen glances during cocktail parties, whispered conversations about art and travel, and spent time walking hand in hand during sunset dates. Joan admired Henry's intellect, his passion for life, and the way he never tried to change her. He seemed to value her strength, even admire it. But then came the moment that would test her resolve. It was a quiet evening on the balcony of the luxurious mansion where the show was filmed. Joan had been mulling over her feelings for Henry. She had grown to care for him deeply, but something was gnawing at her. The show's host, always lurking in the background, had mentioned that they were nearing the time when commitments would need to be made. Joan was torn between her promise and the undeniable attraction she felt for Henry. Could she have both? A love that didn't ask for compromise and a man who respected her individuality? That night, Henry made a confession that shook Joan to her core. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you," he said, his voice steady, but his eyes revealed a vulnerability that made Joan's heart clench. "But I need you to know something. I don't want to live apart. I'm rooted here, in my hometown. I've built my life around my family, my grandchildren. I can't move, Joan. I won't ask you to change who you are, but I need to know if you're willing to build a life with me here." The air between them was thick with tension. Joan, who had always prided herself on her independence, had spent the last few years of her life cultivating her own sense of freedom. She had built a new life in a seaside town, where she found solace in the rhythm of the waves, the quiet mornings spent with coffee in hand, and the knowledge that she was living life on her own terms. Could she give that up for Henry? The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. Joan found herself questioning the very foundation of the promise she had made. Henry wasn't asking her to change who she was. He wasn't trying to mold her into someone she wasn't. But the reality of love, especially at their stage in life, required sacrifice. Could she make that sacrifice and still hold onto the woman she had fought so hard to become? As the final rose ceremony approached, Joan stood in front of the mirror, gazing at her reflection. The lines on her face told a story of resilience. But there was something else there now, a deep uncertainty. She had always believed that she could have it all: love and independence, companionship and freedom. But perhaps that had been an illusion. The final moments of the show arrived, and Joan faced Henry with the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She looked into his eyes, knowing that her next words would change everything. "I love you, Henry," she said softly. "But I made a promise to myself when I started this journey. I promised I wouldn't compromise who I am for anyone, and I don't think I can keep that promise with you." Henry's face fell, but he nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. Joan had chosen to keep her independence, but in doing so, she had broken a different kind of promise, the one she didn't know she'd made to Henry, to herself, and to the millions watching. In the end, love demanded more than she was willing to give, and sometimes even the strongest vows are no match for the heart's quiet revelations. As Joan walked away from the final rose, she knew she had kept her promise, but the cost was a bittersweet one. The lesson was clear: love, at any age, requires a balance between holding on and letting go, and sometimes the hardest part is knowing which promises are worth keeping.